been 5 years or 4 years in the industry, and I'm like, sometimes I would see a term or a technology that I don't understand, and I would ask about it because that's how we learn. Right? 90% of the time, you'll get these positive, uplifting people that are ready to help you. So I think, yeah, you have to experiment with how you learn. Especially if you're a student, you already are in that learning phase. So see what works for you. You need to be really good at learning new concepts, since we just talked about it will change over time. Students who are, in some kind of these student ambassador programs, they do get, these developer relation roles because they have. Hi, I'm Rishab, and this is the Developers Cafe podcast.
Hey, Rishab, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good here as well, Rishab. So, before we begin, can you please tell the audience about yourself? A short, brief intro.
Sure. So right now, I am a developer evangelist for Twilio. Prior to this, I worked, as a cloud engineer, a DevOps engineer. I started in tech, in technical support or help desk, and yeah, I haven't. Uh, People get confused with if I have a degree or not. I have a 2 year diploma in computer networking and technical support, but I don't have a computer science degree. And yeah, I'm just a tech enthusiast, and you could see me, tweeting or blogging about all things tech and cloud.
So, could you just share about your journey in tech? Were you always inclined towards computer science, or how did that all go about?
Sure. So I would say, like if we go back when I was younger, think I had a thing for engineering or mechanical things, figuring out
Okay.
different toys, how they worked. I would, open up our car, kind of, do the oil change and stuff. So there was some interest, um, uh, I guess it comes from my dad. He's a chemical engineer himself, and yeah, but not specifically computer science, I would say, because I think it was like late 2010s, when me and my sibling, I have a younger sibling, we got our first computer. So it did start late. But then when we had a personal computer, it was only used for either homework or gaming. So not a lot of coding or other tech related stuff that would have helped my career, I would say. But yeah, I think slowly, I kind of began to gain interest. Like how, I think it started from like web, like how internet works in general. And I'm like, this is amazing, like how you can connect. And in India, if I talk about the 2010s, the internet was not a necessity. It was, a luxury. Not every household had it. So as I was discovering this whole new world, with computers and how everyone is kind of connected, yeah, I gained some interest and just got interested in to learn how everything is kind of connected. Got into online gaming, so I kind of knew, like, I can play with other players in real time, but how does this happen? And I think at that time I was around 15, 16, when I started looking up, how the internet works. But yeah.
Awesome. So, you mentioned earlier that you started your career as IT help and then moved to cloud. So, how
Hmm.
did that change come about?
Sure. So as I was saying, I did a 2 year diploma. Part of that diploma, was that I had to do a 2 month internship, to so that you're passed in the diploma. Only then you will get the diploma. It was part of the curriculum, which I think is great because you gain industry experience, right? So I joined, a small company. So I was based out of Kingston. It's a small town on the East Coast here in Canada, and yeah, I went there for, I was kind of a IT help desk, or you could say junior IT admin, because I was assisting, the IT admin there. And for 2 months, whether it be laptops, there's issues with cables, or there's issues with access to different softwares, I would handle it. Get to know their ticketing system and all of, you know how the workflow was within IT there. And then I was fortunate enough that they wanted to hire me full time after my internship completed. So that worked out pretty good. Um, and once I got in full time, it was more of a product support role. So, they had a SaaS based product, which they said, this will be a good starting point to get into the company because you'll know the product, you'll be supporting clients, and you'll know the ins and outs. And during that role, I think, so I stayed in that role for a year, um, almost a year. And during that time, I discovered there were like few escalations in like month 6 that required the help of or assistance from the cloud team, since everything the product everything related to the product was hosted in AWS, which is a cloud provider. So I'm like, okay, I would love to know more, because I think it was the third time I was bugging the cloud team with an escalation, and they're like, okay, we can show you around and how things work. So yeah, I think that's how it started. And I remember I had this meeting with the cloud manager, or the cloud engineering manager, and she's like, yeah, cloud is it's really hot. This was back in 2018, and cloud already had kind of made its way, kind of revolutionizing the IT sector. So yeah, she was like, you should pursue a career in cloud. She helped me with resources, training, what our company was majoritarily using, because that way, if I focus on that, it would be easier to move into the cloud team. So I think I did upskill myself for like, took me 4 to 5 months until I saw an opening in the cloud team. And I had, within this 4 or 5 months, I had my cloud practitioner certificate, which is AWS's fundamental cloud certificate. I was going for a solutions architect next, but since this role opened up, I'm like, okay, I should focus on this. So started creating projects. I had 2 projects that we ended up discussing on the interview for this promotion. And yeah, I guess I killed the interview and got the role at the end. But yeah, that's how I entered my cloud engineering role.
I was watching a YouTube video in which you
Mhm.
mentioned that while you were moving to cloud, you asked to shadow an engineer at a present company. So,
Yeah.
what was that experience like? Because most of the folks, when they're learning something, they watch courses or YouTube videos, right? So, they get a slow pace and then they get eventually comfortable with that particular thing. But you were straight away thrown into the real world. So, was that
Mhm.
not a bit of overwhelming, or how did that feel?
I think it was underwhelming, to be honest.
Okay.
The reason being, so as you said, people would watch courses and stuff and look at the amount of content that's available right now. If I had no clue, like where I want to go, if I should pick AWS, Azure, or GCP, I think that's the most common question I get right now is, I do want to start in cloud, but like which cloud provider should I pick? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like look at the job posting, or if you have one that is your preference, it's easy choice. But for me, it was kind of chosen, so I don't have to think a lot, right? The company was using AWS. We already know the different services the company utilized, so I don't have to learn like the entire fleet of services AWS has. And with shadowing, why I say it's kind of underwhelming is because I had that physical contact, and I could be like, hey, this doesn't make sense, could you show me like how this works, right? And then I would piss them off sometimes because my questions, like, I would ask too many. But at the end, like, they were happy that I was asking these clarifying questions. And I think that's one thing that we miss with course or video based content that we watch on our own pace. There are goods and bads. But yeah, I was not so, I would say, yeah, I didn't know about Twitter or tech Twitter, like how you can rely on others to kind of gain some knowledge and have help. So I was not part of online communities back then when I made the transition. So yeah, I think having being able to shadow the actual cloud team and focusing only on the services that were needed for the role. I think that helped me a lot. Otherwise, it would have taken me, I think, almost 6 to 9 months to completely learn AWS and then move to a cloud engineering role. Whereas I was able to do it like in 3 to 4 months, and then I upscaled later too in the role itself. I think it took me like 6 months to finally like feel like, okay, I belong on the cloud engineering team. So yeah.
How did you prepare for the certifications? Like, did you just rely on the shadowing experience and real world experience, or did you also take some courses or anything?
Yeah, so they did. They had a cloud or the solutions architect book, which went over my head. Someone lent it to me, because I think it was too advanced. And I think I took the free code camps. Andrew Brown has a cloud practitioner course, and it was free, so I took that. And other than that, I know one of the again, thanks, huge shout out to this cloud engineering team. They were awesome. They had how you have practice exams, so they had a few with them. So they landed over and were like, you can go over these, and we'll help you to kind of see what the scenario would be like in the actual exam. Other than that, yeah, hands on. I think I learned the best being hands on. So either shadowing or when I was creating my own project, I would be like, I made this service. It has, so let's say it's an EC2 instance. It's running Nginx that is serving my website, but this things doesn't make sense. So they would help me with configuring and making me understand how it actually works and stuff. So yeah, I think that helped me with the exam prep. But yeah, I think if like um one book or one video course, depending on how you learn. I know some of the students or professionals like reading, others like video based content. So one, either a book or a video based course. It could be paid too. I know I got a subscription to a cloud guru when I was part of the cloud engineering team. Everyone got a cloud guru yearly subscription, so that was good. But yeah, that's how I prepared.
In your YouTube video, you also mentioned that you had a chance to go to AWS Summit while you
Mm-hmm.
were learning. So how was that experience like? Because you were not a professional at that point in time. Did you not feel out of place, or how did you make the
Definitely,
most out of that event?
definitely. The most of that event I think I made is by getting swag. So this was my first tech event. I didn't know you. First of all, you would have these many attendees. Second, all of them are passionate about cloud, and third, you have swag. Like, why does everyone is getting free T-shirts and bottles? But yeah, jokes aside, I think it was overwhelming. I remember as soon as I registered, like you have a booth where you get your pass and stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. And I think it was also a key moment on me making the decision of, okay, yeah, cloud is the right choice right now, because I could see, like, I think there were 3 to 5 thousand people all passionate about AWS, and I'm like, this is just an event in this city. Like, what about the entire world, right? So it gives you perspective on if you are making the right decision, I think. And I did make some good connections at that event because everyone was like, oh, you don't. So I would, go up. And I think I had to, at this point of my, like, I'm talking about past, at that point of my career, I was shameless. Like, I would go up to anyone and be like, hey, I work with this company. I am in tech support, but I don't do cloud, but I'm interested in a career in cloud. And everyone was so kind of welcoming, and everyone had a great kind of suggestion for me to focus on. So I think that really helped. I learned about a lot of different roles. So you can be a cloud admin, you can be a sysadmin and still work in cloud, you can be a cloud developer, you can be a cloud engineer, and how like all of these terms in the end kind of had different meanings. And I kind of had the choice. Okay, yeah, cloud engineer sounds good to me because I can't be a cloud developer since I have not had a lot of coding background. So I needed I think that reassurance with, I'm making the right choice with my career. And also, I think just seeing everyone so uplifting in tech was kind of, you know, good. But yeah, it was overwhelming in the beginning. I know the event was for 2 days, so I think the second day was a bit smoother for me.
Just to build upon this question, now
Hmm.
with everything coming back offline, majority of folks who are in college are attending their offline tech meetups, tech conferences for the very first times. So how can these folks make most out of these events?
Yeah, I would say I have had, um, I've attended a lot of tech events in person, not just counting online. And the one thing that I have seen is there's, I think, 1 to 10% a chance a person would ignore you or be, rude. 90% of the time you'll get these positive, uplifting people that are ready to help you. So again, be shameless. I've I was not a student at that time too. Like I was working, right? I was working in tech support. It's been 8 to 9 months. I could have been like, no, I have some dignity and respect, and if the other person is
Right.
rude, that is going away, right? Um, but I didn't go with that mindset. I'm like, I'm here to learn. If I don't know something, I'll just ask. If the other person doesn't have time, they will be like, ask someone else or have that discussion with someone else. There are like thousands of people on these events, right? So make that first. I know it's hard. Trust me, like it takes courage. I would be shaking before, saying hi for the first time. But once you start the conversation, you'll definitely get something out of it. Since, you're so new into the career, you'll get this industry advice from all these great professionals who have been working in it. And yeah, I think just go with an open mind and like be ready to learn. Take those suggestions in, and yeah, I think that's the best way a student can attend a tech event.
Also, the fact that they're the students, they don't have anything to lose. Nobody expects them to
Exactly.
know anything.
Yeah. Yeah. To this day, I'm
So,
like that. it's been 5 years or 4 years in the industry, and I'm like sometimes I would see a term or uh, you know a technology that I don't understand, and I would ask about it because that's how we learn, right? And tech is
right.
it'll change every few years. Tech is gonna change, so you can't be an expert every time. So ask away.
True. I totally agree with that.
Hmm.
Bishop, you spent 2 years in cloud and
Hmm.
then you switched to DevOps. So now why did that happen? Because you are comfortable with cloud, you spent 2 years working professionally. So why you switch to DevOps?
Sure. So when I was in cloud, I think towards the second year, and like the last 6 months in my in that role, I was working a lot with cloud formation and kind of automating a lot of the deployment process. So my focus was already DevOps at that point, right?
Okay.
And I think the company so this was a 35 people company that was acquired in 2019, became a 1,500 people company. But now they realize, like, what are the some big impact projects that we need to focus on, and one of them was DevOps. So you know not deploying infrastructure manually was one thing that we did. So I think I already started working on that, and I was reached out. They were forming this new DevOps team, and they were getting engineers from two or three different products. And yeah, the manager reached out. He's like, you know I know you work in cloud, but you're spending a lot of time in IAC and version control. Like I was coming up with Git workbooks and stuff. And yeah, we had a chat, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this sounds good. Like, instead of me working 50% or 60% in DevOps, and I did like it, um, I'll be working 100% in it. So I think that's why I said yes, since I was already kind of focused on these projects.
You mentioned earlier that you are a self-taught developer, right? And now
Hmm.
with learning DevOps, you have to learn new tools, new
Yep.
developer tools every now and again, right? So I'm sure that you must have figured out a way to learn, like to self learn and
Hmm.
validate resources, moreover. Why I'm asking this? Because, like, you are experienced, you can still, as there are plenty of resources available, you are experienced, you can make out which resources reliable and which is not. But for folks who are just starting out their journeys, it's quite tough for them because with the plenty of resources available, it can be quite confusing whom to follow and whom not to follow. So how do you validate a resource?
I think it's a great question. For me, it was trial and error method. So 2020, COVID happened. We were all locked in. It was pretty kind of strict here too, and I think that year was just really good for my professional development. Is because I tried multiple methods of learning that year, just to kind of get feel of where do I fit in, what makes me understand things. And so even with certifications, I did this experiment where I would study until like the entire like I feel comfortable giving that exam or certificate, and then I would book the exam and give it. And then I did it the other way where I booked the exam beforehand, so like with 1 month or within 2 months, and then studied. Found like I was so much stressed out that there's an end date, right? And I think I couldn't like perform much well than when I was doing it with the previous method where I didn't have a deadline. I just soaked everything in, and then when I felt comfortable, I would sit my exam. So I think yeah, you have to experiment with how you learn. Especially if you're a student, you already are in that learning phase. So see what works for you. Like try out different. If you're watching, video-based content, see if things click with one of the content creators. If not, like try different person, because and that's the reason why I started creating content. Is my manager told me, because to me it was like there's already thousands of content creators who have made DevOps videos, who have made cloud computing videos. Why should I go out and out of my comfort zone and create videos? The thing is, he said that everyone learns differently, and there will be a lot of folks that would relate with you more because of your teaching style or the story that you have to tell. So I have met, I think, at least 50 people now that are in tech support or help desk and have moved to cloud. So lot in common when it comes to these stories of professional or career progressions. But yeah, I think experiment with your learning techniques and see what works for you. Um, but you have to try. Like the only way to
True.
do is you pick one method. So let's say you are having issues with learning from a book. But the thing is, if you have only read like the first chapter and you're like, no, this is not for me, I would say, commit to it, at least do, like half of the book, and then see, okay, yeah, this is not interesting. I cannot get my, mind to focus on when it's text based. Then move on to the next thing. Don't just like try it for once and say, like, oh, this doesn't work for me. I think commitment is the other thing I would say is needed, uh, especially in tech, because again, you need to be really good at learning new concepts. Since we just talked about it'll change over time.
So how do you learn? Videos or docs?
Both, actually. I figured out there are a few things that do make sense in docs. I think there's a certain flavor to it. So like if your docs are very well documented and they have analogies, they have diagrams and stuff, they'll work out for me most of the cases. If not, I'll try to look up tutorial on how this service works. So yeah, I prefer to docs first and then go to video based content if I need to understand it more and how other people are using this service or this tool.
You are working as a developer evangelist at Twilio. So
Mm-hmm.
what does your role involve?
Um, it's an interesting role. I'm learning it myself, right? Because this is my first role in developer relations, and for me, I think it it is kind of mix of attending conferences, meetups, and tech events, um, creating brand awareness about Twilio and making sure our developers are being served. Whoever is using Twilio's APIs to make SMS or any kind of communication with their product. So helping them if they are facing any issues, helping them solve it, making sure all the resources are available, whether it be blogs, docs, also videos. So I'm coming out with few Twilio videos. But yeah, I think that's what the role involves. And in Canada, this is like I'm the first developer evangelist, so I'm trying to grow the awareness about Twilio here, especially with our field operators, which is student like you have GitHub campus experts or
Right.
Microsoft student ambassador program. So it's similar to that, and then also Twilio champions that is similar to like MVPs in Microsoft. So yeah, creating that brand awareness, creating a community around Twilio is my focus is right now.
Do you feel that developer relations is a role that can be tried out by a fresher?
I have seen people doing it, especially I think if you have the skills, like anything can be tried out by a fresher. Focus on those skills, I would say, specifically if you are looking to get into DevRel, like community leadership is great, public speaking, and how to just lead communities. So that's why I see this that students who are in some kind of these student ambassador programs, they do get these developer relation roles because they have these aligned skills that match with developer relations. So I've seen few GitHub campus experts that are working in DevRel now. So yeah, if you want to work in DevRel, I would say focus on the skills that I mentioned. I also created a video on what DevRel is and like what are some skills that you should focus on. So I think I post about it on Twitter too a lot. So yeah.
Awesome. So finally, Rishabh, a message to the folks listening to us, like who are from different backgrounds other than CS, who are
Mm-hmm.
learning by themselves. Any advice, any 2 cents for them?
Yeah. So remember, so I say this. I think I've said this in the past too. Like, remember your, initial goals. Don't get carried away when you are in the process. Like, have a long term goal and then create some short term goals. But then once you are in tech, like remember what was your long term goal, and keep that in back of the mind. And yeah, tech is, as I say, is it's for everyone. But you need, if especially if you're like you have a non-traditional kind of background where you don't have a computer science degree, or trying to switch careers, you're self-taught, you need a lot of commitment and will to keep learning. And tech in general, as we were talking, you need a lot of learning as you even progress in your career. So get used to it is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Okay.